Another episode of Weather Wise. I'm meteorologist Liam Healy.
And I'm meteorologist Christine Gregory.
We've got another information-packed show for you tonight as we're talking about weather that doesn't necessarily occur on our Earth.
Now, how is that possible, you ask? Well, today we're going to tell you all about space weather in our Weather Wise topic of the week.
Yes, in addition to that, we have our weather highlights, weather myths debunked, and first, as always on the list, our Twitter questions of the week.
Stay tuned, Weather Wise begins right now. So, Liam, I figure since we're talking all about space weather today that I would wear my shirt with all of the stars on it.
And you just had to do it to show me up. You know I don't own anything with space on it. The only closest thing I own is a hot dog shirt, which really has nothing to do with space.
No, it does not.
Unfortunately. So, Christine, you know, normally we're pretty weather-wise in this show, but I heard you're feeling a little under the weather this week.
You know, you had to make that joke, didn't you, Liam?
I really did.
You know, I'm finding myself obviously to be catching a cold, so how appropriate is it that we're talking about the cold air causing the common cold in our Weather Myths Debunked segment today?
Well, hopefully you just don't give it all away there, Christine.
Hopefully not.
So it is pretty chilly out there. We are seeing record lows across the entire area. But now it seems like it's time for hashtag Ask the Meteorologist. Maybe they have some questions about some of this cold weather this week.
Maybe.
So, Eric, what have we got this week?
So we have a question about the storm that we had on Monday from Jack. He is an SUNY Oswego student. He asked, why did Oswego get not get 8 to 12 inches on Monday and Tuesday? Oswego was expecting to receive 8 to 12 inches from that storm Monday into Tuesday, but the storm was centered further northwest than expected. Now, this allowed heavier snows to fall more towards the west, towards Rochester and Buffalo. Dry air also worked in from the south, and that allowed for the lack of precipitation throughout much of central New York Monday night. And the storm also being further west caused a warm nose of air to work into the upper levels of the atmosphere. This really decreased snow ratios and even caused some of the snow to change to sleet. With lower snow ratios, the snow has a much harder time piling up, which gave us much lower snowfall totals than expected. Now, our next question comes from Steve Fries. He asked, did this current cold air mass affecting the eastern United States with unusual cold for the second week of November originate in Siberia? Now, this current cold air mass actually came from the northern parts of Canada and even the parts of the Arctic. So this was truly an Arctic air blast. This is why we are looking at temperatures over 20 degrees below average in many areas. Temperatures in Syracuse today only made it up to 25 degrees. Now, the normal high temperature for Syracuse is around 50 degrees for November 13th. Fortunately, if you are not a fan of winter like me, some relief is in sight as we work our way into early next week. We are looking at possibly some 40s. So we're gonna go back to the desk now, and yeah.
So, Eric, I mean, with all this Arctic blast coming on, have you heard more people say that they're getting sick because of all this cold weather that's coming in the area?
Yeah, I have heard so many people say that they have gotten sick this week for some reason. My mom's sick, my dad's sick. Seems like everyone's sick.
Where are you from again, Eric?
I'm from Jersey.
Okay, so you're telling me it's gotten that far down?
Yeah.
It's cold down there too?
Yeah.
Oh man, my poor mom. My poor mom back at home down in southern New York. She hates the cold. Yeah. So, Christine, you know, do you think this is maybe what's causing you to get sick this week?
You know, it really could. I mean, the unusually cold weather, sometimes it just has that effect, but we will talk more about that. But you know what? We did see a snow event that occurred just recently, and we were expected to get 8 to 12 inches of snow, and of course, we didn't get that much snow, and that was all because of the dry air that infiltrated. Of course, Eric talked about that. What do you have to say about that?
Ah, man, I hate dry air. Dry air is terrible, especially this time of year we're getting into the winter. Dry air everywhere. On my hands, I get really bad chapped hands, so it's time to break out the lotion, guys. Anybody have any good recommendations? I'll go to Bath & Body Works this weekend and get some.
I love Bath & Body Works, Liam. I'll go with you. We'll go. We'll go get some lotion.
All right, so coming up after this short break, meteorologist Eric Johnson will be on the weather wall with this week's weather highlights.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back from the break. We're really putting Eric to work this week. He just answered our Twitter questions. I was handling our our weather highlights this week.
Yes.
So, Eric, I mean, what are we seeing around the world and throughout the rest of the country here?
All right, so we are taking a look in the Pacific where we do have this is a tropical depression right now. Its name is Kalmeji, and it is going to be moving off towards the northwest. You can see right around 40 miles per hour by the time we get towards Thursday. Friday, 50 miles per hour, so this is starting to strengthen. And then it looks to be making landfall in the northern Philippines at around 60 miles per hour. So again, if you do know anyone in the northern Philippines, we could be looking at very strong winds. We could be looking at that heavy rain. And again, some of that storm surge as well. Now, moving a little bit more towards the north and west, still in the Pacifics, we have Fengshen. Now, this looks to be curving off to the north and to the east, 75 miles per hour. So that would be hurricane strength if it were here in the Atlantic. And then it's going to continue to curve 90 miles per hour by Saturday. So again, that's a pretty strong hurricane if it were again here in the Atlantic. Now, closer to home, we do have some winter weather that we are dealing with up towards the Midwest. You can see winter storm warnings are in effect for the UP of Michigan. We can see these areas of lighter snow that are going to be shifting over this area as we work our way into Wednesday by 10 p.m. That's when that winter storm warning will expire. But again, you can see that winter weather extending all the way into Michigan. And this is some lake effect snow, so this is going to be continuing, especially in this area, again, into the next couple of hours. Now, as we look at the futurecast, we are going to see that winter weather that has really been taking a hold of the entire East Coast, continuing through the next couple of days. You can see 13 degrees for tonight, getting down to or up to 19 by the time you're waking up tomorrow morning. And even out towards the Midwest, they're also dealing with those very low temperatures as well. Now, we do see some relief in sight as we get towards Thursday. You can see some of these lighter blues are going to start to shift. That means some warmer air finally working its way back in. And then that's going to continue right into this weekend as well and into next week. Now, current temperatures closer to home, look at that, 16 degrees for you in Watertown, 24 in Buffalo, 17 in Binghamton. You can see even some single digits as we work our way towards parts of northern New England. So it is just bitterly cold out there. And that cold, again, does not look to be letting up. You can see these temperatures will just really continue staying cold. We do have the chance of a few snow showers tomorrow morning, especially towards the north country of New York and then into parts of Canada as well. Now, these snow showers, again, will work into the Adirondacks Thursday by noon. You can see that. That's going to continue into Friday as well. We'll see some lake effect snow showers as well for our area, for the Oswego area, and those temperatures will continue to drop as well. Now we're going to go back to the desk to Liam and Christine.
Wow,
So-
Eric. I mean, you know, something that stuck out to me was Dallas, Texas was 34 degrees. Could you believe that?
Now, those were wind chills, though. We got to remember that.
Okay, good.
But, you know, it is
My mistake.
pretty interesting. It does snow in Texas sometimes.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people would imagine that. Funny thing is, me and Christine were just in Texas chasing tornadoes this past summer.
Yes, we
Crazy to
were.
think that summer where we saw a tornado that we could be seeing some snow. And it's pretty crazy. Every week that we've done a weather highlights, we've had a typhoon. It's been 5 weeks of this now. It just won't come to an end. Those waters over there are just too warm for this time of year. Could we maybe heading into an El Nino? I don't think the forecasts are heading in toward that direction, though, for
I'm
El
not
Nino.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll have to look
check
into that.
that.
Maybe next week for weather-wise topic. We'll talk about El Nino and La Nina. So that'd be pretty interesting. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be doing our weather-wise topic of the week. We're doing space weather this week. Christine, are you excited?
I'm very excited.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Weather-Wise. It's time to break down one of our most unusual weather-wise topics of the week. We're talking space weather this week.
Now, first of all, let's answer the question, what exactly is space weather? So according to the Space Weather Prediction Center, space weather is a consequence of the sun's behavior, the nature of the Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere, and our location within the solar system. So essentially, all of these factors come into play to give us this so-called space weather. But of course, it isn't your typical rain or snow type of weather, is it, Liam?
Not in the slightest, Christine. Some of the types and components of space that we'll be talking about today will include sunspots, coronal mass ejections, or CMEs for the shorthand, and solar wind, solar flares, Earth's magnetic field, solar radiation, and geomagnetic storms. Now, don't let that all scare you. We're going to break it all down for you in this week's weather-wise topic. Okay, so now that you know that space has weather in the first place, we need to pin down exactly why it happens in the first place. Our journey starts at the sun, the source of all space weather in our little corner of the universe. A burning mass of high-energy particles, it tends to be pretty chaotic. Some of these events you may already be familiar with, such as solar flares and sunspots. You hear about those in the media quite often. There's two more that you need to be aware of before we get any deeper. So, they're coronal mass ejections and the solar wind.
Now, let's break it all down. So, starting off with sunspots, these are parts of what we would call the surface of the sun that are cool, at least compared to other areas around it. Now, these spots also represent areas where the magnetic field of the sun is quite strong. Now, a coronal mass ejection, or a CME for short, occurs when pieces of the sun's corona explode out into space. These travel slower than some of the phenomena on this list, making the journey to Earth in 1 to 5 days versus just minutes for something like a solar flare.
Now, a solar flare, I think these are pretty cool personally. Often they're referred to as the biggest explosions in the solar system, blasting out electromagnetic radiation at the speed of light, allowing it to reach the Earth in as little as 8 minutes, about at the same time that any other regular solar energy tends to make it here. Now, let's talk about that solar wind. This is the only thing on this list which is constant. Now, what exactly is it? It's a constant stream of electrons and protons from the sun that constantly bombard the Earth's magnetic field while traveling nearly 1,000,000 miles per hour through space. Now, Earth's magnetic field, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? You might think about how a compass points magnetic north. Now, this invisible field around the Earth, that causes that to happen. Now, the magnetic field surrounding Earth protects us from most of the sun's normal radiation. For example, the solar wind, X-rays, and other forms of radiation emitted from the sun. Now, this normal solar activity is what causes the magnetic field to take this shape we see here, where it's bunched up along the day side of the Earth and elongated on the night side. Now, why do we even have a magnetic field around Earth in the first place? Well, it has to do with the core of the Earth. One part in particular, specifically the outer core. This is an area of liquid metal underneath Earth's crust, which creates an electrical charge, which in turn creates the magnetic field we rely on every day. Now, that electrical charge really kicks into gear because of the rotation of the Earth. And, you know what? What about these space storms that affect our magnetic fields here, Christine?
Yeah, so there are also a variety of different space storms, like Liam just said. First, we'll talk about geomagnetic storms. Now, these are caused by variations in the solar wind that causes the magnetic field of the solar wind to be oriented more south. Now, the strongest of these storms result of coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, and can last from a few hours to a week long. Now, some impacts from these storms can cause blackouts and even issues with your GPSs. So this occurs on a scale ranging from G1 to G5, from minor to extreme impacts. And another type of space storm is known as a solar radiation storm. These occur through CMEs and solar flares and can reach the Earth as fast as 10 minutes and can occur for hours or even days at a time. Now, some of these impacts include damage to satellites, radiation damage to astronauts, as well as to high altitude flights. Now, this also has a scale that ranges from S1 to S5, ranging from minor to extreme impacts.
Now, Christine, you said that some of these storms could potentially impact these high altitude flights. So that's really kind of interesting thing. Maybe you don't like flying, this maybe not something you want to hear. I personally love to fly. So hearing the fact that I might get impacted by some radiation kind of puts a damper on my love of flying a little bit, but not really ever going to stop me from getting in an airplane and traveling around the world. So these storms are sometimes ones for the history books. Now, many might not have heard about the first major event from way back in May of 1921. But many are familiar with what happened back in March of 1989. If you're not, ask your parents. They definitely remember. So let's start out with a storm from 1921 first, though. Let's go in historical order. So now the world wasn't very interconnected in 1921. So while this was a powerful geomagnetic storm, it only disrupted a few core areas. But it did manage to knock out telegraph communications from North to South America. It was even strong enough to damage undersea cables laid across the Atlantic, really penetrating down deep into those deep areas where those cables were laid. It's really terrifyingly impressive how far this radiation can make it sometimes, Christine. So, and I think really the most interesting thing about this storm is that it allowed radio signals all the way from Europe to be received and heard clearly in North America. You never really hear much about intercontinental radio transmissions, but it certainly was possible back in 1921, at least for 2 days while this storm was impacting the area. And now, that second event, a little fresher in people's minds, and a lot more devastating on many accounts. In May of 1989, a powerful coronal mass ejection, like we talked about earlier, and an extreme solar flare came together to really can lead to an intense geomagnetic wave that slammed into Earth's geomagnetic field during the early hours of March 13th, 1989. Now, this created an intense aurora, which could be seen as far south as Texas and Florida.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy. So we were just talking a lot about Texas earlier. They're getting a lot of interesting things that have happened there. Snow, tornadoes, even auroras are possible at Downing sites. Anything is possible in the big state. Now, this had a beautiful outcome. The impacts were felt rapidly as some went into a panic that nuclear war had begun. And don't forget, this is during the Cold War. And in Quebec, power was knocked out quite quickly, leading to one of the largest blackouts on record for Hydro-Quebec. Now, on the weather side of things, transmissions from the early GOES satellites were disrupted for hours. These are an early version of our weather satellites. Currently, we're on GOES 16. Now, all the other satellites in orbit lost connection for quite some time. It was very worrying for people on the ground. And really, these sirens were relatively of similar strength, but the disparity in the technological sophistication of the two eras really changed what kind of impact it's going to have. It's really something we need to think about as we head into the rest of the, our future. As these geomagnetic storms, we need to be aware of what's happening. So I think we're out of time for this block right now. So what do we got coming up next, Christine?
Yes, well, coming up after the break, we'll be discussing this week's weather myth. Does the cold air cause the common cold? Well, stay tuned and you'll find out. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to WeatherWise for our Weather Myths Debunked segment. Joining us today, once again, is meteorologist Eric Johnson. So, what myth are we discussing today, Eric?
So today we're discussing the question, does cold weather make you sick? Is there a link between the common cold and cold weather? So what do you guys think about that?
I think it's true, but only because I always get sick when it gets cold. So,
Yeah, I find it to be
having
mostly
Christine next to me
true.
who's also sick, definitely a little worrisome that I might actually pick up the common cold once again. Don't need to be sneezing, especially when we're doing weather-wise.
So many people associate cold weather with getting sicknesses like the common cold. Now, while the weather isn't directly responsible for this, it's the low temperatures that make viruses spread easier. The cold and dry air also may impact the body's immune system. So let's take a closer look. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, there are millions of people who develop the common cold every year in the US alone. The rhinovirus is known to be the most common cause of the common cold, as they're responsible for more than half of the cases. Research suggests that this rhinovirus may be able to replicate more effectively at temperatures lower than 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the average core body temperature for humans. The temperature inside the nose is around 91.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes the perfect environment for the virus to grow and thrive. More research found that decreases in temperature and humidity in the air over a 3-day period can increase the risk of the spread of rhinovirus infection. In conclusion, although the cold air doesn't directly cause the common cold virus, it creates a more ideal breeding ground for these viruses to thrive and spread easier than if it were warmer.
So I've always been told, that it's one of those things that you always hear about, but I've always been told that people just end up getting sick because they have to spend so much more time together indoors. So you're spending that much more time cooped up in a room with people, odds are you're just more likely to get sick. I don't think it has anything to do with this cold weather. I think it just has to do with the fact that we're all stuck inside.
Now, that thing that Eric was saying about it being below 37 degrees for over a 3-day period and the drop in the temperatures and humidity, well, we definitely saw that over the past few days.
Definitely, for sure.
Talking about cold temperatures.
Couple record low high temperatures were set today. So we had at least, I know Binghamton definitely broke the record. Their old record low high temperature was 28 degrees. Their high was around 22 degrees today. I don't have the exact data just yet, but I was waiting for the Clamber report.
That's a high temperature.
Yeah.
That's not a low.
We should be
Buffalo
close.
actually broke their low temperature record today. They went down to 14. Their old record was 16 for this day.
And we should be close to 50 degrees in Syracuse at least, so it's just crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, those summer dreams are just escaping us day by day as the leaves begin to fall off.
So
No.
sad.
So coming up after the break, we have one more final weather check with meteorologist Eric Johnson. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. It's time for Eric once again to break down your local weather for this week. So what do you have for us this week, Eric?
All right, so we are taking a look at the snowfall totals from Tuesday. Now, again, we expected 8 to 12 inches here in Oswego, and as we discussed earlier, that dry air caused us to only get 4.6, but you can see some areas like Watertown, you got 6.4, and Redfield, you got 5.6. So it was a decent snowfall, but just not as major as we had expected. Now, current radar, we are seeing some clouds and even some light flurries off towards the Rochester area. It's going to stay mainly dry tonight, lots of clouds out there. Now, as we work our way towards the futurecast, we can see a few snow showers will pop up towards the North Country and the Adirondacks, but I think here in Oswego will stay mainly dry, but just very cloudy out there. Now, today's highs, we only hit 25 like we discussed earlier, 26 in Fairhaven. Look at that, 20 degrees for you in Adams. So it was a bitterly cold November day. Now, as we work our way into tonight, it's just going to continue to be brutal out there. 9 degrees for you in Harrisburg, 14 in Pulaski, and 21 for you in Oswego. Now, as we work our way into tomorrow, we're going to stay really cold out there. It's going to be staying cloudy. We may see a few of those flurries off to the north. And again, those light winds out of the south-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And we're going to go back to Liam and Christine for some more weather.
You know, it's nice that, we're a little bit quiet now. We're cold, but at least we're not getting a lot of snow.
I think it's staying quiet for the rest of the week now, at least.
Yeah, for
and I
the
did
most
want to
part.
point something out. And when Eric was talking there about the 22-degree high in Watertown you saw in that graphic back there, that was also a record low high temperature for Watertown.
Wow.
Their old record low high was 24 degrees to this time of year. So pretty exciting for times for people who enjoy breaking records. Maybe we should call Guinness. So, Eric, what was your favorite thing we talked about today, real quick?
Definitely the snowfall and like why we didn't get as much snow as we expected, because I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely very interesting. Now, that's all we have for you tonight, but tune in next time so we can continue to make you weather-wise. Good night, everyone.